Good evening and welcome to the Gold Goats and Guns Hour here on YouTube and DLive. My name is Tom Luongo. It's Monday, April, 29th? 29th. Already. April's already over. The year is a third gone. It's 2019. And we got a lot to talk about tonight. So I'm going to just get started. But before we do, as always, we do this on Monday nights around 8 o'clock. I'm a little late tonight. Around 8:30 on Friday nights, as well as Catch Ken during the week as well, during the afternoons. Or I do a shorter version of this. You can follow my work over at tomluongo.me. You can follow me on Twitter, TFL1728. You can support my work either through the Brave browser or PayPal or Patreon, where I have you can sign up for the Gold Goats and Guns investment newsletter, which I put out once a month, which, as a matter of fact, I'm in the middle of writing right now. All right, so we're here, and it's the stream, and we're ready to go. And let's get started. So tonight I want to talk about elections. We had an election in Spain yesterday. We had an election in Ukraine last week. And we have European parliamentary elections in a month. And I think it's important that we continue to discuss all of these things as they happen, because they all have bearing on geopolitics. They all have bearing on the European Union. They have massive bearing on the financial markets and everything else. So let's not forget all of those things as we talk about all these elections. So let's start in Spain. The Spanish elections actually went directly to type. I didn't really expect anything weird out of them in any way. The socialists are back in charge, or reaffirmed their ability to maintain a government. Pedro Sanchez was the leader of the socialists who forced the previous government out of office. They formed a government the last election, and now have formed a minority government the last time. And now with this election, they are going to have the opportunity to form a majority government, not on their votes alone. I think they got 137 out of a needed 175 for a majority. But they've got more than enough support from minor parties to be able to put a government together. I don't think anybody's worried about that. And the markets reflected that today. There was a small bounce in the euro. There was a small bounce in the pound, as what amounts to a non-Eurosceptic government will be in charge in Spain, or continue to be in charge in Spain. There was maybe a little bit of worry that possibly the new Vox party would be able to take greater than 10%. It did not. It's going to be a protest party for quite a long time in Spain. I was reading about some stuff on Spain over the weekend, and it seems to me that this is pushing directly to type. Fundamentally, Spain is not a quote-unquote right-wing country. It just isn't, and I don't think it will be anytime soon. Now, being anti-austerity at a certain level, what's interesting about Spain is that their anti-austerity party is Podemos, and Podemos is, a hard left party in every other way. And same way that same way that kind of five-star movement, Italy, is also a relatively leftist party, or leftist movement, because don't call them a party, that is also anti-austerity and anti the standard IMF austerity response to budget deficits, falling current account, and all that stuff. So it's a monstrous mechanism by which to run your economy. You pile up debts under lower interest rate regimes, and then when the bills come due, you turn around and say, well, you got to cut government spending, and you got to cut all this stuff, and you got to privatize all your assets at pennies on the dollar, because now because now there's no buyers for any of your stuff. And it's the height of economic mismanagement. It's one thing when a person does it to their in their own life, right? It's one thing when a person mismanages their finances to the point where they wind up, overspending and then having to fire sale everything at pennies on the dollar and lose their home, and if they even recoup any investment whatsoever, their initial investment whatsoever. It's a sad thing when you do it in your own life. It's another thing when your government does it for you and then bankrupts an entire nation of people. And then we turn around and prescribe that the only way that they're going to be able to get any help from the world around them is to basically pay the loan sharks. And it's a monstrous system, and it needs to collapse. And it will not, probably will not improve anytime soon. So that's Spain, right? Nothing interesting about Spain. Spain's not going to be voting heavily Eurosceptic in a month at the European parliamentary elections. Now, the thumbnail for tonight's talk is, whether Nigel Farage can outwit the Brexit half-wits, meaning Jeremy Corbyn and Theresa May. It's going to be interesting to watch it play out. But let's talk about Ukraine for a minute before we talk about Brexit. So we've got a little bit of an idea now that that Zelensky, the president-elect of Ukraine, we have an idea of how he's going to run things, which is to say it's not going to be much different than the way Poroshenko ran things, at least as it pertains to Russia and as it pertains to any of the outstanding issues of the day. Unless he's just picking fights for no reason, because it's in order to show that he's got some. It's funny. I'm at this point with politicians where, especially non-politicians like Zelensky and Trump and others, that they have this idea that they still have to act like regular politicians. Like, they can't show any fear, they can't back down, they have to project strength, all this stuff. I'm like, that's what got everybody else into trouble, dude. When you really stop to think about it, isn't that what it gets every other politician into trouble? Aside from, just the basic corruption and everything else. We're just talking about, at a certain level, these narcissists have to project strength in order to survive. Well, at least they think that's what they have to do, when the people don't really want them to do any of that. What the people really want them to do is lead. And leadership is not taking an uncompromising position. That's not leadership. Okay, what Donald Trump is doing right now, for example, as the leader of the United States, is not leadership. Okay, being a bully isn't necessarily leading. It's not. You don't rise to the top of the competence hierarchy because you can beat people up. I don't think Trump ever learned this. I certainly know that John Bolton never learned this, and certainly Mike Pompeo never learned this, because none of those guys are in any way competent other than knowing how to climb the Washington swamp ladder. So I have to ask myself, what is Zelensky thinking in responding to Russian President Vladimir Putin's decree that he's going to Putin made a decree that he's going to fast track members or citizens of the Donbass, of Lugansk and Donetsk, we're going to fast track their applications for Russian passports. So now they'll be able to hold both their own passports and Russian passports, and in effect have dual citizenship. And Zelensky went off on this huge rant about, how horrible it is to be in Russia, and getting a Russian passport means that you have the right to, die horribly in a cell and not have any freedom of speech and not have this and not have that. And it was like, really? This is the way you're going to start your conversation with Vladimir Putin? When you campaigned on the idea, because you're different than Poroshenko, that you're going to deal with and you're going to come to some kind of reasonable resolution on the Donbass, and this is the way you deal with this to start out with. I mean, maybe he was a little angry that Putin, pushed him on this. I could see that, but how about we show a little humility, dude? You're a nobody. You're the president of Ukraine, which at this point is kind of like being the president of the Gainesville Rotary Club. Okay, I think that guy has more power than you do. It's kind of sad. So Putin just, to his part, Putin just laughed the whole thing off and said, well, you know, because Zelensky then turned around and said, we're going to fast track giving Russians the opportunity to get Ukrainian passports. Then, if that's what it means, so they can be citizens of the world and they can be citizens of a free regime and they can be free people. And Putin's like, that would be a great idea. Actually, it was like troll level 1000 achieved by Putin when he said that. He's like, oh, that would be great. Because I still believe that the Ukrainians and the Russians are one people, only divided through cynical geopolitical machinations by the European Union and the United States. He didn't say that last part, but that's exactly what he was thinking when he said that. So I think he's like, that would be fantastic. Let's do that. Why don't you do that? That would be great. So I found that very funny. It's going to be interesting to see how Zelensky gets along with Putin if he's ever allowed by the United States to actually sit down and talk to him. If Zelensky wants to show that he is actually in charge of anything, and right now he's not in charge of anything because the Supreme Rada elections don't happen until October, so we're going to be 6 months worth of another, of rhetoric bombs going back and forth. But at the very least, maybe it won't escalate. We'll see. I don't know. The truth of the matter is that at this point, the Russians have wiped their hands of, more appropriately, actually, wiped their hands of the Ukrainian state. They're not negotiating with them at all. They've barred all oil and coal exports to Ukraine. And where are they going to get that? Where are they going to get that? Where are they going to get that energy? And Putin's, blown holes in is blown holes in the fiction that Ukraine is actually rebuying Russian gas, having been piped through other places. And that's not true. They're just still buying it off their own pipeline. They're not going to be able to do that until the end of the year. So, and they're only going to be able to do that until the end of the year. And there's going to have to be a deal at some point. And Putin knows this. And Putin's put the ball back in Angela Merkel's court over in Germany, saying, "Look, I'm more than happy to cut a deal with these people and to sell them some freaking gas. That's not the issue. Tell them to start acting like human beings." I find all of it really funny. So that's what's going on there. And last point about Russia before I go any further. Gazprom, the Russian state gas company, issued their earnings report today for fiscal year 2018. They finished up their fiscal years, obviously from Q2 of the previous year to Q1 of this year. And it was a blowout report. It was ridiculous. And here's one more point. If anybody thinks that making Gazprom sweat over getting the last permit for Nord Stream 2 is going to materially affect Gazprom's bottom line, Gazprom generated $7.7 billion in free cash flow. Forget operating earnings. Free cash flow. This is something that the whole shale industry in the United States hasn't generated a dollar yet. Okay. And they produced $7.7 billion in free cash flow last year. 2019 will be even better. And Nord Stream 2 isn't pumping any gas, and that's all on their balance sheet on their capex expenditures for 2018. So if you can imagine what Gazprom's fiscal year 2019 returns are going to look like. This is why it's the cornerstone of my portfolio. I don't even make any bones about it. I like talking my book when my book is that easy to talk about. Not other parts of my book are all that good, but that one, that's all good. All right, so let's talk about Brexit. There hasn't been any new news or anything I just didn't really prep much of a show tonight, and one of our regular viewers and regular readers has been helping me do thumbnails and for the videos, and just sending me stuff. And he sent me that great one today of over the weekend of Farage, Corbyn, and May, and I'm like, I have to use that. So how do you buy Gazprom shares? You go to your broker and you buy the ADR here in the United States. It's not hard. You can look it up. It's very easy. And you're North on 60. If you're in Germany, you can buy them directly off the German stock markets. They're listed directly in Germany. Yeah, and they'll probably pay somewhere close to a 7 or 7.5% dividend this year on top of everything. On top of everything else, they'll probably pay about a 7% dividend. So, you're in Canada, you should be able to buy them in Canada. Shouldn't be hard. I would be shocked if there's not Canadian deposit receipts in Canada, or if they're not listed on the Toronto Stock Exchange. I don't know that they are. I know they're listed in London. I know they're listed in Germany, and obviously they're listed in Moscow. And I know their ADR is listed here in the United States. So, and ADR is just an American depository receipt where a bank holds a block of Gazprom shares that they openly trade, and you trade those shares and only those shares. You don't trade the actual shares themselves. Don't know. So let's talk about Brexit a little bit. I don't have a lot of new Brexit news, but I think it's really interesting to note a lot of the things that I think they're happening with Brexit. So Nigel Farage's Brexit Party is polling at the same level as the Labour Party for European parliamentary elections right now, around 27%. And Labour is actually starting to coalesce around that number. Brexit Party is probably polling a little higher than that. And I'll tell you why. Because there are lies, damn lies, statistics, and then British polling. Okay. And what I don't think the polls are accurately measuring right now is whether or not the I don't know if the polls are accurately measuring at this point. Oh, there they are. I'm sorry. I didn't for those of you on DLive, I haven't been following the comments because I didn't load the page. So there it is. So I'll get to all your comments on DLive in a little bit. I'm very sorry. I should have reloaded the page. It didn't automatically update. But the one thing that the polls are not covering at this point is just how much anger there is and what turnout could possibly be for the European parliamentary elections. Normally, the European parliamentary election turnout is really low. It's that way all over Europe, right? And so this is how Farage and UKIP won in 2014. In a low voter turnout scenario, UKIP was able to take 25% of the vote, because if you get, your 15% of your people to all show up and everybody else stays home, then you can easily outpoll your percentage based on an outsized turnout, right? It's just math. Well, it's the same thing now. Imagine if what people's voting intentions may be for the European parliamentary elections doesn't measure how much people are actually going to vote. Because are Labour voters really that jazzed to go vote for European parliamentary elections? What about Tory voters? What about Greens? They're not all. There's not any enthusiasm to go to the polls if you're a Tory, or if you're one of the 5 million Labour supporters who voted to leave. Right? You're not jazzed about this. We're supposed to be out of the European Union, right? What the hell are we doing standing for European parliamentary elections? Unless you're going to vote Brexit. If the European parliamentary election turnout in Britain is high higher than they're expecting. Expect craziness. I think I'm going to have to do something. In terms of the expect craziness in terms of the turnout numbers. Hold on for just a second. I got to do something real quick here. I don't think DLive works properly under Brave. So hold on. So I can easily see, for example, I can easily see the Brexit Party massively outpolling their massively upside surprising relative to their polling when it comes to the European parliamentary elections if the protest vote is really, really high. There may be some drop frames while I load this browser, so don't feel bad about that. That would be all me. And while DLive tries to load the web page, because I want to make sure I can get to your comments, because I can't see your comments right now. As Opera tries to start and restart, let me close some of this stuff down. So, oh my God, come on, man. I know my bandwidth is tight, but it's not that bad. So I'm just really surprised. I think it's really going to be very interesting to see how this plays out going forward, because we really could see a much, much higher percentage. And if that were the case, that would change everything. Like, that would absolutely change so many things. So stop that to make sure that that's good. There you go. All right. That makes sense there. And then there we go. It's actually coming in. All right, great. All right. Okay, so just trying to make sure that I can actually see what's going on. All right. Yeah, you're going to have the stream probably cut out for a second while I was doing all that, because it was trying to load. It was trying to load the thing. So I just want to make sure that that comments are coming through. It seems weird. Everything seems a little off tonight. So if things are a little off, it's partly my fault. So yeah, I just there's a real distinct possibility that could happen to that could happen. So yeah, I mean, I really think that, I'm sorry, I've lost my train of thought, kind of get lost in all of this stuff over here, but trying to deal with this technical stuff. But the point being is that Farage knows what he's doing. He understands that Brexit is the issue that will unite, that has a possibility of uniting the British electorate. Okay. And what's also really important to note is that there's a very, well, I wouldn't say vocal contingent, I'd say a small, even sizable contingent that believes that somehow Farage is now running as a stalking horse for the establishment in some way, because he's trying to split the right vote to ensure that Labour wins. It's like, are you kidding me? That's the dumbest thing I've heard in quite a long time. And I'll give you 3 good reasons for it. Ready? 1, Farage created the concept of Brexit in the first place. And he worked 25 years to get it done and out the door. He already built one political party. He can build another one. Number 2, what would be the purpose of splitting the right vote to allow Jeremy Corbyn to win, when the establishment no more wants Jeremy Corbyn to win than they want Nigel Farage to win? Okay? It seems insane. It seems insane for anybody to even think that, right? So to me, the whole thing just seems like a really, really stupid argument. And then the third is like, the third argument is that no, Farage is not a deep state stalking horse because he's not, as somebody pointed out today, we were arguing about this on our Slack channel, he's of the wrong background. These are the wrong, he's not from the right background, right? He's not, gotta get this right, he's not public school educated, he's not from an upper class, he's a self-made man. It's ridiculous. The whole concept of Farage being that guy is just nuts. No one wants him to win this election in the European for the European Parliament. No one wants him to then stand in the general election and go against the Tories. The establishment's very happy having the Tories and Labour fight it out amongst themselves and keep those two and keep that false divide and keep everybody packed into that false divide. That's what they want. You know, you can have 6 or 7 parties in Britain, but you're not allowed to have representation really by more than 2. Alexander Kalish reminds us that Farage could also unite the EU anti-globalists as an MEP and take down the whole cabal. So, I don't know that there's going to be enough seats to do that. And Alexander, I'm not really sure that they're going to do that. Right, he went to Dulwich College. So, I mean, I know what public university means here in the United States. I always know that it's backwards in Britain. Public school means that, yeah. So he went to the equivalent of what? University of Florida? Right? I mean, he didn't go to Harvard. Right? Right? Didn't go to Harvard. Didn't go to the equivalent. Didn't go to Cambridge. Didn't go to Oxford. Right? He's not part of that clique. You know, he started a friggin' political party in a pub. Right? That's what I'm talking about. So, Stephen Burnage reminds us that also that it looks like support for UKIP is also collapsing. Exactly what I thought would happen. That UKIP was only rising above their 6% baseline. Rising above their baseline during all of the Brexit machinations when Farage didn't have a party, and they saw their numbers rise from 6 to 11%, but they didn't rise any higher than that. And the minute Farage organized his party, boom, they're back down to 6% or even 5%, and then that's just where they're going to be. There's not the EU Parliament has no power, Stephen Burnage, almost none. That's the irrelevant part. It's not, the EU Parliament is a platform. It's a campaigning platform. It's all it is. Nigel Farage understands the power of the only real power in the European Parliament, standing up and upbraiding those fucking people for 5 minutes whenever he's allowed to speak. He's run whole political campaigns from the floor of the EU Parliament. I think that, but the point is that Theresa May is desperate to try and get her deal passed, or some version of her deal passed, in order to satisfy her masters in the European Union. In order to get this done and over the line, she doesn't want to. They're in a damned if they're in a damned if they do, damned if they don't scenario. If they stop the European parliamentary elections by signing this terrible withdrawal agreement and bolt on a customs union, or get rid of the backstop, or some other weird thing, whatever May tries to do to try and stop the election from happening, that was then going to force, ultimately, that will just force an even worse result for them in now when the next general election comes around. I mean, you cannot continue to deny people their ability to speak over and over and over again, say you are not capable of giving of returning a result that we respect, therefore we're not going to respect it. You can't do that and expect to continue to stay in power. There comes a point where you just lose everything. And right now, Theresa May, the only reason she's still in power is because the Tory leadership wants her to stay in power. They didn't change the rules to get rid of her. So they're going to hold on to her for as long as possible to try and get this thing done because they don't know what else to do. They're looking at the polling results and they're realizing that what's the next thing that happens after this? Oh, well, so what's their best case scenario is for Farage to only take 30 or 35% in the European parliamentary elections. Because if he does that in European parliamentary elections on high voter turnout, he's going to do it in the general election, and then he's going to be prime minister. And it will be the quickest fucking coup, quickest friggin' flip in history. Colin Richards asked, well, will he get Brexit and then just quit again? Because back to the old parties without UKIP by then? I don't know. He's going to know. If he sees this one through and gets Brexit done, he's going to have to stand. In order to get Brexit through, he's going to have to be prime minister. So he's not going to be able to just quit once it happens. He's going to have to stay, and he's going to have to devote the rest of his life to this. I mean, remember, his original plan was Brexit. I mean, I just think the guy had his word. He worked for it for 20 years. He never really wanted to be a politician in the first place. He just went out and did what needed to be done. He happened to be good at it. He's really good at it. And from there, he just, once it was done and once they passed Article 50 with 480 votes, he's like, oh, come on, I'm done with this. And UKIP was moving in a direction that he couldn't control anymore. So Jonathan asks over on DLive is, how many combined seats will the Eurosceptic groups potentially take? My numbers, I'm seeing around 220 to 230. Brexit Party is polling almost 20% in general election polling. That's big. It's beyond the 16% chasm, so it's very effective. He's already at that level. He can easily go, if the European parliamentary elections, if he outside surprises in the European parliamentary elections, he'll go to 30% overnight. I know Gerald Batten and Godfrey Bloom were with Farage from the beginning. I know that. I think he was tired. I think he wanted to change. And he wanted to pass UKIP on and say, okay, if I've got something that's self-sustaining now, I don't need to lead it. He was wrong. Now, some people take that to believe that he did that on purpose in order to stop UKIP from taking over. I don't think UKIP was ever going to take over from the Tories. I think Farage saw that UKIP had its day. It did its job. It was not passing. It was not getting through the 16% barrier. It wasn't getting through the 16% barrier on Brexit because David Cameron stole that and then gave out the referendum, and then the referendum passed, and then the Tories started actually implementing it along with Labour. And at that point, what political battle at that point is Nigel Farage fighting? He'd won. Except that he didn't win. Was it naive on his part? Sure. I'm not going to say the man's perfect. He's no fucking saint. He's certainly no libertarian. I like him, though. I think he's a force. I think he's a positive force in European Parliament, European politics, and in world politics. But I don't think there's anybody in British politics right now who has a sense of the playing field better than he does. Change UK is not going to ruffle any feathers. They're going to pull 4%, France. Period. They're not even interesting. No one wants them. No one wants what they have, what they're selling. Okay? I mean, are you kidding me with that shit? Seriously. Are you kidding me with that shit? Juan Isaac, I did see the, I did touch on the Spanish elections right at the outset. So looks like the socialists are going to be able to to cobble together a coalition and maintain whatever status quo they currently have. I don't think it'll save them in the end. It won't do anything. It's just going to ensure that they go exactly the way they've been going. Jonathan, there's no difference between 35% and 40%. It won't change the number. It won't change. Britain only has 73 seats. Do the math. So another 5% adds 2 seats. It's not enough to change the balance of a 753 seat board. That no one wants to form a coalition with. At least they're not AstroTurf. Holy shit, they are nothing but AstroTurf. Chukka Amuna? Anna Soubry? Are you fucking kidding me? These people are all bought and paid for by Tony Blair and the fucking EU establishment. They're the biggest bunch of fucking fake assholes in British politics. Oh my fucking god, dude. Seriously. They are the biggest bunch of fucking fake assholes. You're just really funny, France. You really are. I don't know. I mean, I guess they pay you well. It's really funny. Most governments becoming irrelevant because of their perpetual cronyism policy, says the Umpire's Post. They are totally out of touch with voters and not understanding real issues, problems negatively affecting people. Agree. Most governments, the only thing I would say, all governments eventually wind up that way. They go through the cycle and eventually they end up where they are. This channel needs a swear jar. Fuck you. No. Oh my god. God save me from the friggin' trolls. All right. The Tories are hoping that voter anger will be directed at the EU in the election and not the British Parliament. Jabba Soapbox, that's a fatal hope, dude. I mean, seriously, that's a really, really, yeah. Oh, that's good. I like that, Alex Grant. I could parlay the swear jar into a donation mechanism. There you go. So what? You guys will donate a dime every time I say fuck? Well, then I'm going to be a millionaire by the time the end of this month is over. Or do I have to be creative about it? Do I have to be like Gunny Hartman for it? We hate PC. We hate PC. Go for it, Tom. Oh, I'm as un-PC as they come. Stephen Burnage says, I'm concerned that they're going to try and engineer some crisis inside the next 6 months, which is designed to overtake Brexit. See, I already gotten a dime out of Standard Dev over on DLive. He donated an ice cream, which is about a dime, about 12 cents, for the swear jar. So, fuck. Nicely done, dude. I appreciate it. That's fucking great. You should, you should fucking donate more. I mean, fuck me. That's fucking awesome. I need a swear jar in my house. You guys are great tonight. All right. It's taking us a little while to get going. Yeah, I pedal donated 2 more ice cream. Holy shit, look at this. All I have to do is keep saying fuck. And the money keeps rolling in 10 cents at a time. I love it. Dude, seriously, you're cool. Well, the best part about that is that, I eventually see just about 100% of his donation. So, as opposed to 30%, as opposed to Google taking 30% of the cut. FYI, if you guys really do want to, donate, we don't have the YouTube channel. It's not monetized. You can PayPal, or donate through Brave. You can also install the Brave browser and and you can donate that way. Both tomluongo.me and my YouTube channel are verified with Brave now, so there's another option if you want to. If you don't want to subscribe, if you don't want to use Patreon to support the work, which I fully understand, perfectly reasonable, though I've noticed that 239 of you have overcome that, and I appreciate it, every one of you. You can do it that way. So, the language, I'm clutching my pearls so tight my fingers are twined in purple. Never challenge a New Yorker to a swearing match. Yeah, fuck, it never works. Military integration with the EU will be used to stop Brexit in the national interest. Actually, Jabba Soapbox brings up a very, very good point that May, I've seen multiple reports from Brexiteers who I follow on Twitter and who I've developed relationships with, that May has signed no less than 5 treaties behind the scenes while the Brexit negotiations were going on over integration of the British military and intelligence services and everything else with the EU, predicated on the fact that this is why she has to get this withdrawal agreement through, because a WTO Brexit is I think it's incompatible with the treaty she's already signed. Won't MI6 just go ahead and do the JFK solution on Farage if he wins? I'm not going to condone violence or anything, or I'm not going to, I have to do the standard thing here, but it's always a possibility. But the thing about it is that, that just because there comes a point, though, where when you kill a man, it becomes a martyr. So the Brave browser is really cool, actually. It's not everything works as well as it should, but it's actually really quite good for, I've been impressed. And I actually don't even mind having ad alerts come through, and I click on them every once in a while. I get paid, right? So, I don't have to it blocks all the ads I don't want to see, and then when it serves me an ad as a Windows 10 notification in the corner of my screen, I have the opportunity to click on it and make 5 cents. I'm like, it's a far better model than the other system. You'll note that I still don't have, and I'm not going to have ads on my blog over tomluongo.me. I just have no use for it. I mean, I don't need you all to beg. I don't need y'all to. I don't need to beg y'all to go over there and click on ads and shit. It's just a waste of freaking time. You do it however you want. If something's sustainable and if I'm producing content that matters to you, you'll find it in your heart to figure out whether or not you want to make sure that I continue to produce it or not. And if I can't generate that level of loyalty and that level of interest, well, then I should go get a different job. It's my failing, not yours. Macron was arguing for the Grand EU Army would assume that it would be used to suppress movements. Tenjin, you have absolutely right. I agree with that. That's part of why they want it. I think Farage is irreplaceable. I think he is, and so I think it would do a lot of damage if he were to be killed in office or whatever. Colin Richards reminds us that May also signed us into the UN Immigration Pact under the cover of Brexit chaos. Yes, you fucking did, bitch. The EU army is for internal control only, says Alexander Kalish. The Russians would be able to fart their way into France, but they're not interested. That is absolutely true. So, right, the great Brett Harris is here. Do love gold. That's why we do this. Yeah, I mean, as far as Spanish elections are concerned, I have Stoyanovich and Jonathan Gillespie are talking about it over in DLive. It looks like there's enough that the socialists won, I think, 137 seats. They only need to come up with another 38 seats to be able to form a government, and I think they can get that from forming with minor parties. So I don't think it'll be terribly difficult for them to do that. Yeah. So, I mean, I keep looking at the roadmap for Brexit, and I keep thinking to myself, yeah, and the EU, of course, is 40% of the EU military, or the UK is. It's crazy, which is why they don't want the Brits to leave the EU. That's a good one. I just think it's the roadmap for how this plays out over the course of the next 6 months. I think that Farage understands the flow chart. If they do this, then he does this. If they do this, then he does that. If they do this, then he does that. He's already told everybody what happens. I mean, he has, and it's pretty impressive. So, yes, Nickel says the EU-UK Brexit plan is for no Brexit. I agree. May is now toast and has completely screwed over the Conservatives. You're absolutely right. And they've left a massive opening for Nigel Farage to go all Republicans on the Tory Whigs and destroy them. And that is exactly what's going to happen over the course of the next 2 or 3 years. The EU army will be useless, says Dragon M, full of pussies who can't fight their way out of wet paper bags. No, they're going to hire Merkel and Macron are going to use nothing but all those North African immigrants and all those Syrian ISIS fighters. They're going to just draft them into the EU army. The whole point of it is so that Germans go and suppress the yellow vests in France, and the French go and suppress Italians uprising in Naples, and the Brits go in and storm the streets of Budapest and force Viktor Orban to take a whole bunch of migrants. That's the point. That's what it's for. If the Russians wanted to take over Europe, the Russians would take over Europe. As long as the United States stood by and did nothing. And May is toast. The problem is that there's no way to get rid of her at this point. I mean, she set this up perfectly to ensure that she can't go anywhere for at least another 6 months. I agree, Daniel, that we should avoid any personality cults, but in the short term, you need a leader. And Nigel Farage has risen to the top of the competence hierarchy because he's competent. And there's literally nobody else in Britain with his skill set at this point. I wish there were other people. Maybe some others will come up out of this. I hope that they do, because any movement is if it's stronger than one man. And I love what he's doing in terms of trying to get really high quality candidates to stand as MEPs across the political spectrum. I think that's very important. If he wins the European parliamentary elections and go into the general election, and even if he doesn't win the general election but goes in and takes a number of seats, gets 60, 70 seats, and then even better, convinces the ERG to leave the Tories and come to the Brexit party, which is where they belong in the fucking first place. Then they have 100 seats or 120 seats. It will bring people up out of the woodwork. It will galvanize people to take this further. Colin Richards, Trump complained about NATO countries not paying their way for not paying 2% of GDP, which is an insane fucking number, by the way. Does that mean that we'll be expected to be the protector of Europe at our expense? You already are. Conservatives should have learned from the Liberal Democrats and the tuition fees. You wish. Tweety Bird asked me, will Farage go full animal on the EU? I don't know about that. But I do know that he's just going to continue to do what he's been doing. And if he has another 30 or 40 people with him in the European Parliament, it's going to make it very, very difficult. And then on top of Salvini and Orban and the rest of them, and they have 200 or 225 people in European Parliament, and they can't be shouted down because he's one of 6 people. Got to remember that Nigel Farage, for the most part, has been standing up there by himself in a body of 750 people and calling them all twats. Right? I know none of you have ever held a proper job. You remember when he told them that? Right after Brexit? So I know many of you have never held a proper job. None of you. have ever held a proper job. And they all fucking lost their shit. Because the man has no fear. That's what you need. You need another 50 people like him. Can you please call Dominic Grieve a thin-lipped cunt? Oh, I can do better than that. He's even worse than that. He's a French thin-lipped cunt. How's that? Does that make you feel better? I fucking hate Dominic Grieve. What a scumbag. Unbelievable scumbag he is. Then what happens will be that May, the MPs knife May. Will it work? Doubted. They waited too long. I agree. Farage does not need to make a progressive heel turn. Friends, it's like you're like I fart, and in a bed of roses, and you're like, "Fuck is wrong with you, dude?" Dominic Grieve is the former attorney general who's the leading Tory Remainer who's been literally negotiating with Emmanuel Macron to stop Brexit. And he was recalled by his constituency. He's in one of the safest Tory seats in the country, and he was recalled by his people. And he called it a political hit job by UKIP. Fuck you, you arrogant prick. It was gold. I love it. Frank, I'm glad you enjoyed it. I'm glad. None of them have ever held a proper job. It was unbelievable. It was gold when he just stood up and you're like, none of you have ever held a proper job. It's great. What would we do without you? Macron really is out of hand. I agree, North on 60, with his abuse of the yellow vest. It's really horrible to watch. He is. And he doesn't care. He's just an unbelievably arrogant, power-hungry little fucking French troll. And I don't mean that as a disparagement of French people. He's like everything he's like, when we outsiders say, the French, we think Emmanuel Macron. I mean, it's just that's who he is, right? He's everything. It's like when French people say Americans, and they look at Donald Trump, it's the same thing. So what is Farage's endgame? Who is he working for? What's Farage's endgame? Brexit and Prime Minister. That's his endgame. Thank you, Corn, for the donation on D-Live. Russian passports for Ukrainians. Your thoughts? Nona Mouse. I think it's a brilliant move by Putin. I covered it right at the outset of the stream tonight to say that I think that when Putin made that announcement, it really torqued Zelensky, and who then turned around and went went full virtue signaling on Facebook in a really crazy post, and saying that, well, if you want to be a Russian citizen, if Ukrainian citizens want to become Russian citizens so that they can lose their freedom of speech and they can lose their freedom of the press and be and all all the literally standard Western media tropes about Russia. Then they're free to do so, and we'll then issue Ukrainian passports to Russians so that they can flee that oppression. And Putin turned around and said, "It's a great idea. The Ukrainians and the Russians are really one people, and we should have free movement across the borders." I think that would be fantastic, and I'd love to stand down and talk to you about how we can accomplish that. Troll level 1000 unlocked. So. Paris is a war zone. He's just watching it burn. Macron is. Yeah, I agree. Farage is Trump with a brain and the ability to put together complete sentences. He's also much smarter. He's also actually has a much better handle on what's happening in the world economy than Trump does. Dragon M says, look, Macron is actually worse than your stereotypical Frenchman. So I guess to say that he's a stereotypical Frenchman is an insult to stereotypical Frenchman because he's a pervert with a grandma fetish. Yep. Yeah, no, I thought it was a really, Mouse, I thought it was a really great move by Putin to just deflect the whole thing and just roll with it and go, now, are we going to sit down and actually have a serious conversation like men, or are you going to be a fucking pussy? Every once in a while, Putin just kind of lays his dick on the table, and it's just a beautiful thing to watch. And he does it in such an offhanded way at this point. It's really quite good. Oh, Charles and Louis Vincent Gave are fantastic. There are some very cool French market philosophers. I agree. Mark, I absolutely agree. Macron is a moronic weasel. All right, let's see. We got about 5 minutes left before I bolt out for the evening. Putin is he's not the only adult in the room, but he's close. There are a couple other adults in the room. Honestly, Kim Jong-un just showed himself to be one of the adults in the room by going to Putin over last week and saying, I need you to act on my behalf with Donald Trump because I can't work with this man. He sends lackeys he has lackeys negotiate for him as a head of state and with a head of state like myself, and I don't consider that acceptable. So I need you to do it because I can't get anywhere with him. When Van Rompuy signed on as president, he said in his first speech after, who are you? I know, who voted for you? I remember that speech. This is Farage. Herman Van Rompuy just kind of walked in and Nigel Farage was like, who the fuck are you? What the fuck is this? You're as interesting as a damp rag. It was great. Notre Dame might reopen as a mosque. Oh. Only if the Pope has something to say about it. All right. How much longer does the yellow vest simmer before exploding? I don't know. I'm amazed they haven't at this point. De Gaulle was the last great French president. Uh-oh. Vote for the very, very, very silly party. Yeah, I could. Spot on comment about the Pope. It's true. I mean, yeah, the fucking Pope is it was 500,000, not 500 million, but still, the point taken. Pope offers 500,000 to the illegals, but says nothing about Notre Dame. That's because the Pope is a fucking Marxist and not a Catholic. That's why. Yes, de Gaulle was the one who blew up Bretton Woods by calling our bluff about guns and butter during the 1960s by buying all our gold. Yep. The French problem is simple. They have 40 trillion euros off the book debts, all inflation linked. You can't inflate your way out of inflation linked debts. I like that. Yeah, Farage called Van Rompuy a low-grade bank clerk. It was... no, you're not shadow banned. Not here. Tratters. You're not... I can see you. I can see your stuff. The slightly silly party. Oh, or am I just slightly silly? I'm only slightly silly. I would run for the. I would run for the slightly the slightly silly party. Yeah, I would run for that party. Mike Krieger mentioned that all aspects of U.S. society are in decay right now: healthcare, finance, education. Do I agree? Yeah, I do. Thank you for the donation, Tratters. I greatly appreciate it. Healthcare? Yeah. I mean, we're paying unbelievable amounts of money per capita for healthcare and getting very little in return for it. Same thing with finance, same thing with education, same thing with infrastructure. The way we spend money, we don't spend money well. We generate all this capital and we don't spend it well. We spend it in actually the most unbelievably bad way imaginable. Will you please run for president of Russia in 2024? Putin can't run, so you would be great. Unfortunately, I don't speak Russian. I could probably get up to speed between now and then, but I don't think they would elect me. I like Krieger. Krieger's a good guy. I've met Krieger at least via Lee Stranahan and Garland Nixon on Fault Lines. We've been on the same segment together. I like his work. I have always respected it. I don't always agree with it, but I'm sure he doesn't always agree with me, and that's perfectly fair. So, but he's a good guy. He understands that what the real fight is, which the real fight is about decentralization versus centralization, and that decentralization will always win. But centralization will make everybody's life miserable in the process. So, this is why I'm quick to embrace platforms like DLive and Brave and Steam, for example, and others, because I think that we have to embrace these alternative platforms as best we can, even if they're not particularly good, if they've got their incentives aligned properly. And I think both Brave and DLive have their incentives aligned properly. I also feel that same way about Steam. Had it in the portfolio for over a year and a half. I think that the platform has seen its best days though behind it. I don't know. I'm not crazy about what's happened since then, but and so Franz is just trying to distract and take me off my game, because that's what he's supposed to do. We don't talk about goats enough on this channel. Yeah, we do. We talk about goats about as much as we need to. But I do like Mike. I think he's absolutely got the he's nailed the real issue as to what we should be looking for and how we should be interpreting all of these events. Right. One of the things that's important when you're looking at all this stuff is how to interpret these events, how to interpret what's happening around you, and not get caught up all the time in all the little niggling machinations of, minuscule people like Theresa May and the rest of them. That's not what's important. Is to then take the step back and go, okay, what does this all mean in the grand scheme of things? How do we beat these people? How do we get around them? How do we make our end runs around them so that we can continue to do what we need to do to communicate with each other and the rest of it? Like, I refuse to sit here. I'm very happy to leech off of Google's bandwidth. Google doesn't make any money off of me that I know of. They don't serve any ads on my channel. I don't, they don't do me any favors, but I get the I'm a loss leader for them. I think it's great. While I collect donations on DLive. Yeah, I don't know that DLive I don't know that DLive works properly in Brave, to be honest with you. Shat in the Woods Bear. I don't think it does. I don't think it updates properly. I think that they have a lot of. It's still a very bare bones browser. So it is what it is. Deutsche Bank going down and a major economic crisis would be a neat distraction for Brexit. Agreed. But actually, they're not. What's going to happen is that those things are going to feed back into Brexit, and it's going to actually give Farage all the ammunition he needs to say, we need to get the fuck out of the EU. They're failing. This is not our problem. This is not our debt. Am I familiar with the work of Dr. Mark Skidmore and his claims that there's another $21 trillion in missing government funding? If so, is it bunk or credible claim? I don't know. I have not heard of Dr. Mark Skidmore. I do not know. I've heard of those claims, but I haven't really looked into it. There's a lot still to come on with Deutsche Bank. I agree. The current plan is to split off asset management arm. The commerce deal is dead. Yes. Alexander Kalish says that Skidmore is both real and credible. Okay. Do I think the DNC is ready to concede 2020 to Trump? They seem serious about pushing Biden. I think they want to continue to have an insider. They would rather lose with a party loyalist like Biden than win with a party outsider, or have any chance of winning with a party outsider. Brave works, but no DLive token donation. Actually, that doesn't work. Okay, yeah, and donation accrual doesn't work under the browser yet either. It only works under the mobile app, which is very bare bones. So again, this whole idea is, this whole thing is still very, very bare bones. Did Sargon go too far this time? I have no idea what you're talking about. Deutsche Bank is dead. They've been dead bank walking for like 5 years now. They can't stop. We can't allow it to die yet, because if they were to die, then bad things would happen. But we talked about this on Friday night. The mother of all dollar rallies is here and upon us, and it's going to unfold over the course of the summer, and it's going to be ugly, and it's going to create. I'm almost convinced that we're going to have another September, October meltdown, not just in markets, but I'm talking in bond markets. And between now and then, this summer, pushing Brexit off to Halloween is a bad idea, because the longer they push it off, the worse it's going to be when the comeuppance happens and the European Union really, truly starts to degrade. Yeah. Trump's going to be a great job for the Democrats. Why not push a loser? Trump's going to win in 2020 at this rate, because the Democrats aren't putting up any solutions. All right, so an hour and 6 minutes, and I'm about done. So I'd like to go now. You guys frightened me terribly. I'd like to go now. That's a quote from something. All right, and you probably won't get it. There it is. So let's call that a stream. Let's call that a show for the evening. So if you like what you heard tonight, please give a like and subscribe down below. I'd really appreciate it. Let's do this again on Friday night about around 8:30 or so. Again, I'll be on. I don't know. I'll probably be on tomorrow at some point if I have time. Though I have a lot going on. This is that time of the month where I'm writing the newsletter, and I don't really have a lot of time to live stream, because I have to it's still an hour and a half out of my day, and I don't have a lot of time. So and I need that time to write and not lose my mind. So you guys take care. You have a great evening. We will talk soon. Keep your stick on the ice.